Councilmember Stacy Green.
Present.
Councilmember Kim Green. Here. Councilmember Bob Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Ken Palfini.
Here.
Mayor Sue Talavero.
Here. Thank you. Number 3 is a presentation from the Siskiyou County Economic Development Council, a quarterly update. Ladies?
Don't think so.
Good? Okay, good? Yeah, great. So I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for having us and letting us come present some project updates today. My name is Alex McBride. I'm a program manager with the Siskiyou Economic Development Council. We work on several different projects across Siskiyou County, and we've definitely worked with city staff and council on some really great projects this year. So thank you for letting us come and update. I'll provide a few programs, then I'll pass it on to my colleagues. So first, I guess just more of an update. We've been working on the Vista Drive redevelopment project with city staff, starting pretty much with the EDA grant that we wrote that helped fund the infrastructure and the utilities, and it kind of helped to spur some of the development of that a few years ago. And kind of in continuing with that work, we've been working with city staff on an enhanced infrastructure financing district. It's a new tool that California has revived. It uses some sales tax and some property tax to fund infrastructure. So we've spent a lot of time researching the feasibility of these things, and hopefully going to continue with that work in the future. So then another service that we have is our Small Business Development Center. So we actually serve businesses and work with businesses in Weed, develop their plans. We sign non-disclosure agreements. We keep the businesses private. But I'm happy to say that we are serving quite a few of the businesses in Weed at this time. And we're planning a workshop in Weed at the community center in March. It's a workshop on how to buy a business. So we'll have some more details and some more publicity and marketing stuff around that in the upcoming month. And then I just wanted to provide one more quick update on our Brownfields Coalition. The City of Weed is a lead member in our Brownfields program. And we have been working with city staff, and we actually just recently came to the last Weed Economic Development meeting, and we're going to work on creating a little bit bigger of an inventory than what we currently have, and potentially do some brownfields assessments in the future. Hopefully get some more properties down on Main Street back into redevelopment and back into reuse. So we're really excited, and hopefully I'll have some more updates on that in the future. So with that, I'll pass it on to Corey.
Good, thank you.
My name is Corey Hayden, and I am new with the EDC. I've been there since March of last year, so I haven't had the privilege to be in front of council yet, so it's very nice to meet you. I'm the program manager for communications for the EDC, so one of our deliverables is to put forth a really strong communication campaign, both on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, to market and showcase Siskiyou County as a great place to do business. And so if you look at those platforms, you'll see some of the representation there of our county and our strengths in terms of industry and small business. We also respond to requests for information from the state governor's office for business development inquiries, and so that's an avenue of our business services staff that they put a lot of work and time into responding to those RFIs. And when we visit for our annual presentation, we'll bring one of those promotional videos in our annual report to give you some insight into our work in the past year. The other element of my work is in downtown revitalization. So I have the privilege to work with an amazing network of leaders from across Siskiyou County. The network is known as the Siskiyou Revitalization Network. And so the EDC helps to provide expertise and leadership to support this amazing group of people who meet each month and then put on a training event quarterly to help residents go back to their communities and discover practical ways that they can bring support business and retain business and enhance community and tourism in their downtown locations. We just recently held a quarterly meeting, and I just want to let you guys know how amazing the community participation from the community of Weed is in this specific network. The individuals that attend and provide leadership are there as members of your community, and they are sharing strategies that they are using and trying here to create positive change. And they're also sharing ideas, and communities are learning from them as well and going back to their own individual towns and cities. So it's a pretty incredible exchange to see happening, and it's grassroots work that we're really proud to be involved in and very grateful. The last piece that I work on is resiliency, and tomorrow we'll be in a Siskiyou County broad meeting to contribute to the SETS. And so it's our regional economic development strategy that we contribute to in partnership with the counties of Trinity, Modoc, Shasta, and ourselves. And again, the representation tomorrow at this meeting from Weed is incredible. And so I just want to thank your community for being so participatory in our work. And I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague, Heather Dodds.
Thank you, Corey.
Hi, I'm Heather Dodds. I'm Digital Marketing Manager for Discover Siskiyou, representing the Siskiyou Tourism Improvement District. Just a couple updates from us over the last few months. I think the biggest thing for us was that we were renewed for a 10-year term. Pretty huge for us. That was back in October. The Board of Supervisors voted in support of it after we presented them with a majority petition that had been signed by the majority of our lodging properties in the county. We had great support from lodging in Weed, especially for that, which was really cool. Super excited. We have been in the market for about 2 years now, so we're really excited to keep that momentum going and really accomplish some cool things over that 10-year term. Some stats on our web growth. We've grown our page views. Monthly page views have grown 60% in the last year. Our Instagram has grown by 195%. We're actually pretty close to the size of Visit Redding's Instagram, which is kind of cool, you know, for a smaller county. We are getting reports from our lodging properties that occupancy is on the rise. We're getting ready to kind of pour more funds into our digital marketing as we head into the spring shoulder season, which is typically a little bit slower for our lodging properties. We recently had some social media influencers here in Weed. They stayed at the Hilo. They're a couple. They live full-time in their RV and travel around in their adventure wedding photographers. So we sent them around Weed, had them take some really awesome photos and videos, and those will be made available to Richard at the chamber to use free of charge in any marketing you guys would like to use them for. So that was really fun. Just a reminder, we have an industry site that can be accessed at industry.discoversiskiyou.com, and we have a whole marketing toolkit there with images and videos and resources that are free for our jurisdictions to use, and we also publish monthly progress reports, so talking about our web stats, our PR, you know, where we're appearing in the news, all that good stuff. So if you want monthly updates, they are available there. And I think the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure you guys are aware of it, but a little over a year ago, we got a cold call from a gentleman who was with the United States Speleological Society. And he was interested in bringing their annual convention to Weed. And so we started kind of, you know, checking around about it, and it turns out they are going to be here in 2021. They've been working really closely with College of the Siskiyous, and it's an event that's going to bring in a couple thousand people to the city of Weed. So we were super excited about that and to be a part of that, and it's going to be a really awesome event. So that's kind of all I had. Do you have questions for any of the three of us?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The event you just spoke of,
Yeah.
do you know the month or approximate date?
I know it's going to be spring 2021. I'm not sure of the exact date. I could get that for you, though. I can follow up on that.
Okay, and the name again was it? I didn't catch it real quick.
The
sorry.
U.S. Speleological Society.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Cavers, yeah.
Bob, any other questions?
Okay.
No, thank you.
Thank you
Very much.
Sorry,
Thank you.
actually,
Just so you know, we're actually scheduling a 40-hour HAZWOPER class for emergency service personnel in Public Works. It'll be occurring April 6th through 10th at the CAO. It's a HAZWOPER. It's Hazardous Waste Operations and Emergency Response. It's a 40-hour course. Sorry, it's related to brownfields, but just so that the fire
Those two
staff know. Yeah, thank you.
Those three.
Yeah.
4. You can go too, John, in case you need to know about that. Okay. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Non-agenda public comment. So now is the time if anybody would like to say anything that's not on the agenda. And I want to remind you, we do have a hearing that is only for the city and the owner of the building. So if anybody has anything to comment on for that, speak now. If anybody has any public comment?
I have a public comment card. Is
Oh.
that yours? Anthony? Come on up.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is Anthony Stringy. I run the Pilot Travel Center down on the south end of town and have been in that position for the last 5 years. My whole reason for speaking tonight is I wanted the council to be aware of the struggles we're having with the Greyhound down there. I've been with the company for 11 years now. This is my second location I've run, and I've seen consistent issues with Greyhound throughout my career. We struggle with them leaving passengers behind. There's no real way to contact Greyhound. We don't have any good numbers, and so really a burden falls upon us to deal with folks in the middle of the night when they're leaving them there. Their clientele that they bring through is a high-risk, high-theft clientele. We can put numbers to this. Our sister store in Central Point, Oregon, just last year kicked Greyhound off the property. Their 6-month inventory improvement after Greyhound left was $45,000. Their 1-year improvement after Greyhound left was $138,000. We think most of that's attributable to Greyhound. When I go in after a bus has been there, I pick up $40 to $50 in empty packages. That's about $16,000 a year, and that's not everything else that they conceal and leave in. They present a danger at times. In Central Point a couple years ago, one of their buses ran over somebody on Pilot property, and they settled out of court for $40 million there. That was a rider who didn't make it back to the bus in time and ran up along the side and was knocking on the door trying to get the driver to stop for him, and he decided to continue on and ended up running over this poor guy. So just looking for if there's any help we can do that you guys can offer. Greyhound has asked us to be a stop for them. We've said no. I know they've been working with Mr. Chang over there. They claim they're not using weed as an official stop now, but from what we see, absolutely nothing's changed. They stop, they're there for 20 or 30 minutes at night, their drivers get out of the bus, they come in our store, some of their guests make disturbances in there, and the theft, and sometimes they damage some of our facilities. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I can make a small comment if I may.
Yes.
Can we?
Small.
We are just that we're looking into that. We just haven't come to a resolution on how we can deal with it yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're very aware and concerned also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, sir. Have you contacted the police regarding the activities any time or so?
Yeah, we've had them out on a fair amount of calls out there regarding to Greyhound-related issues.
Okay, where that wasn't mentioned in your presentation, so I was,
Oh, yeah, thank
I
you.
was hoping that would happen.
Yep, thank you
Okay.
very much. Anybody else for public comment? Yeah.
My name is Scott Castle. I'm a general contractor in the area. And last Valentine's Day, I was about $4,500 worth of tools were stolen out of the back of my truck and then taken directly over to the Black Butte Saloon upstairs. And then that morning, the police, tracked it down to that place. And then I was up in the building with the police that morning and just witnessed like the health hazard and the people living there, and was just like, really concerned about what was going on there, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I'm sorry that happened. Anybody else? Yes, please. Your name?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Brian Stewart. I'm actually a resident of McLeod, but I do own property here in Weed too. I'm also a general contractor. I've worked with Scott in the past. I have a passion for historic preservation, buildings that require renovation and upkeep. I think that buildings that are located in downtown cores of old small towns, especially the mill towns in our area, have a lot of value. And locals sometimes don't see that, but tourists do see that. And if there's any way to encourage revitalization of these old buildings and keep them in substantially the same kind of condition that they were 100 years ago, it's a tourist attraction, and it lends credence to the history, the uniqueness of a town, and it makes the downtown core more viable again. I think we all know that a lot of communities in this area could use that kind of attention. I have worked on properties in McLeod, Dunsmuir, qualifying buildings for historic building code consideration. I've had discussions with John on the application of that for some of the buildings downtown. I'm not here to promote that it applies to the building in question tonight, but I am here to comment that I've worked on properties adjacent to buildings that are owned by the Happy Company, and my experience was far from being happy working with them. And I'm just cautious that as the city proceeds with a resolution or remedy with these property owners, that they be extra careful and extra cautious and very thorough. And I do hope for a happy outcome. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Anybody else for public comment?
Gene, I think Gene Skeen's here for public comment.
No. Gene, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I got something to say.
Okay. Let's hear it.
I'm Gene Skeens, and I live at 627 Stringtown. I want to know why all of a sudden you can't park the way we park. We've been parking that way for 50 years or more. How come you don't come up with some kind of solution to fix our roads?
Oh, we are working on solutions to fix the road.
I've heard that. Ain't nothing getting done.
They are on schedule, I know, for next year, this year, next year. I know Lincoln Heights is one, but Bob's area where he lives, up by the mill, which is where you are, that's coming up this year.
You can't even drive around that corner.
It's on schedule already to be fixed.
You should close the road.
We don't want to do that.
If it's
Yeah,
safe.
if you go around there, it'll knock your car out of line. That's how bad it is. I mean, the holes are that deep.
Okay, we will let our Public Works Department know. Thank you. Have them look.
On this issue,
Sadly, it's all about
So the
money.
roads are going to get worse away and worse away if the guys do nothing, huh?
We're fully aware,
Come up with some
Gene.
kind of
We're aware.
solution.
We're fully aware, it's just one
Yeah,
is
that's
lack
what you
of
keep
funds.
saying.
I know, but lack of funds is one of the problems we have. But I do believe Bob has been very vocal about your neighborhood, and again, it just comes down to lack of
Well,
funding for right now.
cut the bush here and put it somewhere else.
Craig, can you give an update of when that's supposed to happen so he has a reference when it's already scheduled to be? That might help.
We have a road project scheduled on Davis Street this year from the church as far as we can go, as far as our money allows us to go up Davis. I hope to get all the way around to Hillside.
Okay.
but that's not Mill Street that he's talking about.
Right, it's Davis.
Do I need to recuse myself to speak on this subject?
It's public comment, so yes, you would need to go down there.
Then I probably
Because
should.
we really can't comment on public comment.
Okay. I probably should. I just, that's why.
You're gonna tell us something we don't know?
Just speaking for the neighborhood.
Okay.
Speaking for the neighborhood. need to come over here. Bob Hall, 649 Stringtown Avenue. Just piggyback on what Gene was saying, right now, and we have been parking that way for 50 years, and we understand that there's other issues in town where we have to, where we're trying to straighten out the parking issues. But where we are on that particular corner, to come around that way, to park the way we need to park, we have to go all the way around to Liberty and come back around. The shortest way is Mill Street. We don't use Mill Street any longer because of the condition of the road there right at the turn. So as far as I think some of our residents there are concerned about being fined or being cited when it's going to be quite a problem to park in the direction you're supposed to park in. So I just want to make that point that it's just very difficult to park in that direction unless we're doing K-turns and the road isn't that wide in the first place.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Anybody else for public comment? Okay. Thank you all very much for your comments. We'll move on to council member announcements, meeting reports, and comments. Ken? You're not used to being first, are you?
No. Let me go to a couple notes I wrote. Corey was here representing the Siskiyou Economic Development Council, and she mentioned the Siskiyou Revitalization Network. As she described it, it's a collaboration from across the county for leaders, business people, to get together to figure out how we can make our whole county, including Weed, and we've been participating, but we're also a little bit self-promoting a bit. That we've had great participation by Councilman Hall, Ray Strack out there, Richard Dinges, the lady that was here, Corey Hayden, and these meetings are open if anybody wants to come to them. They're welcome. The next meeting is on the 2nd of March, and it's at the Community Center in Weed. So it'll be so the hours are a little strange, but it's from 3 to 5. And I will also tell you that it's 3 to 5. The only reason you're out there after 5 is because you want to stay. So we're very concerned about everybody's time element. I also this month went to a meeting called FACES. It's kind of a joint project right now between concerned citizens of Weed and the college on how to approach diversity in our neighborhood and actually just how to learn from one another. So, and again, that is also open to the public. So if anybody is interested, my email is on the website. Just send me an email and I'll send you a schedule. That's it.
Thank you. Would you like to report, Bob?
No. Okay. Yes, I also attended the FACES group, and I did just real quick on just to highlight what we have what we're trying to do basically is what we have in our school system right now. We have children who grow up in our community with a understanding of race that is very few communities have, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing. Our kids actually grow up in a bubble, a bubble that it is so special, and it's time to learn to celebrate that, and by doing that, how we do that is to celebrate them. They're the one, it actually happens. Anybody that has any kids that go through our system, they know what I'm talking about. And what we're doing is trying to learn to celebrate diversity. And it's not just with race, but the race is the easiest thing. But we have a thing going on in our country right now, Republican, Democrat. That's diversity. And it's pretty ugly what it's turning out. And we need to learn to work together, and that's what FACE is about. Also, we were part of the Siskiyou County homeless count, point-in-time count. And this year we ended up with, our final count, not official yet, but our count that we handed in, we had 57 homeless people in our community. We had 18 last year. The reason why the difference is we abandoned buildings. Now, the people living in these abandoned buildings, and it's not just on Main Street. In our community, we did a very thorough job this year of going into places that, well, the abandoned buildings obviously don't have, the ones we counted don't have electricity, and there are people living in them. We have areas right outside of town that actually were part of our count also. But the abandoned buildings and the homelessness is, and it's incredible, I'm going to say this, it's incredible how many of these people were born and raised in Weed. So we had 57 this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Could I add to that? And they're closer than you think, so I would put that out there. Because of confidentiality, we can't say where everyone is, but they are closer than you think.
Kim Green.
Okay, so today I had a meeting with Susie Clark, who is the new continuing education and non-credit education class coordinator for Colleges of Siskiyou. And she shared with me an upcoming two-day conference that's going to be at the college on April 3rd and 4th. And it's cannabis history, farmers, students, entrepreneurs, law enforcement, and there's a big talk on hemp. And I think there's 3 different classes that they're going to be doing over the 2-day period. 4? It's at the COS. I don't know that it says that on there. And the Weed Community Center is happy to announce that we were just awarded a grant, a Blue Sky Solar grant through Pacific Power, just a little under $137,000. So that project is going to be starting. That is going to probably save our community center and offset the costs of the high heating bills we have, and hopefully at some point start heating the indoor swimming pool. And then I'm also on a group through the community center working on revitalization of the Sons of Italy baseball field to hopefully bring back American Legion baseball to Weed. And there's about 7 or 8 gentlemen that started this on their own and then came to us. So just submitted a grant to Scott's Turf. Yep. Right, yes, we've gotten that. We have the cities involved, the rec department, the high school, and then just some local businesses have already said they're going to donate. So one grant application is in. The next 2, the application packet hasn't come out yet. And as soon as they do, they will be applying for those also. So the goal is to straighten up the field, redo the concession stand, possibly have lockers underneath the bleachers for the kids, because when the high school plays there, they have to go over to the gym, to the locker rooms, and then come over to the field to play, and then go back over. So we're hoping to have a newer facility back in town.
Go, girl.
Nice job. They came to us, and it's wonderful.
And that effort is an entire South County. The gentlemen that are working on that are not just from Weed. It's the entire South County is working on that, which I am happy about.
Count me in, Kim. You need
Stacy Green?
Yes, I have something from the Rural Committee that I'm on for League of Cities, and it's a news update on California Circular Economic and Plastic Pollution Reduction Act. And so I'll just read a little bit of it. The background is about California's solid waste and recycling industries are facing a series of critical issues. First among these challenges you've seen in the news, in China's trade import policies, these changes are collectively referred to as National Sword and have significantly disrupted California's recycling industry by restricting foreign inputs of recycled materials and increasing the requirements that aim to reduce contamination levels in recycling systems. And there's a couple of bills that are already have been passed. SB 8054 by Allen and AB 1080 by Gonzalez are identical bills that direct the California Department of Resources, Recycling, and Recovery to establish a comprehensive framework to address plastic pollution and waste by adopting regulations by January 1st, 2024. There's just bullet points, so if you want to know, I can tell you more. But I'm just going to say what the speaking points they gave us to talk about is just a few. And yes, because the bills have crossed houses, when you call your senator, hopefully you're in that communication with your elected officials, us here and everywhere else too. Reference AB 1080. When calling your assembly member, reference SB 54. It will assure California is on the forefront of reducing pollution from plastic packaging and products. And let's see what else is there. I think that's the main thing. So if you want to be a part of that, you have some thoughts about that, you can contact your various representatives. And as we know, what is said, people say their vote doesn't count. I don't believe that. Every vote counts. And if it happens, whatever the decision is because of collective voting. And I agree with some of the people have said, if you don't vote, you have nothing to say. You have nothing to question. I totally agree with that. So that's all.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you for being on that rural communities league. I had the privilege that, thank you, the city sent me to the League of Cities in Sacramento. It was a convention. When I first was elected, and there was about 500 people that were attending, and when I attended in January, there were not that many people, maybe 100, 150, and I questioned somebody as to why it was so much smaller, and it was an election year, so there weren't a lot of new council members, which made it, I enjoyed the first one. It made this one a lot nicer because it was just such a smaller group. And I got to meet a lot of other council members from all over. I got to meet a gal that I saw on TV 3 nights ago from Southern California. But I appreciate going. I learned a lot. I always learn things. And having gone for the second time, it was nice to go again and get some stuff that I on the second time to hear it. And I learned that our city's pretty functionable, and that was pleasant to know. Talking to other people was very nice to know. And that's all for me. Okay, so we are moving on to item 6.
Ms. Mayor, I have
Yes.
something else I just thought of. Another thing I attended the interviewing for our new city manager, and I just want to comment on how far we've come in the last, and this is some credit to Ron, is that what was it, 11 years ago? How long have you been here? 8 years? 9 years? 9 years ago. Really, nobody wanted the job. And we've come a long ways in 9 years. I mean, we had some top rate, not that Ron wasn't top rate, but there was a lot of people that wanted this job as our city's in a lot better shape than it was 9 years ago. So for us all, in the community in itself. So we're doing better. I think we're improving.
Thank you, Bob. All right, item 6, hearing notice to abate. A notice to repair or abate 219 Main Street and 261 Main Street. Property owners shall be heard and show cause, if any, why the nuisance should not be abated by the city. The city council shall proceed to hear the testimony of persons to whom the notice to repair or abate has been given. Staff report. staff report, or Ron? John?
John is going to present the staff report. John is the building inspector for the city of Wayne.
Well, part of my duties are code enforcement, and several months ago I noticed that there's some buildings on Main Street, the ones mentioned by Sue, that are in serious disrepair. So I did some more research, and I found out that previous building inspectors had agreed that they were in serious disrepair, but not much was done about it. And on November 7th, I posted the bank building, 219 Main Street, as unsafe to occupy due to several reasons. One of the main reasons was the brick parapet that basically was falling apart over Main Street. As of today, the brick parapet has been removed. I spoke with the contractor that was in charge of that, and he informed me that basically the bricks were removed by hand. There was no hammer needed, there was nothing needed. His workers were basically lifting the bricks out and taking them out. So basically it was a dangerous life safety issue. So as of today, that has been abated. However, there is the balcony that sits out over the sidewalk there in front of 219 that is in, again, serious disrepair with rotten beams, rusted metal fittings, sheared off bolts. I was told by a structural engineer that inspected that recently, and his words were that he would not park in front of that building. So that's the start of it. 265 Main Street is the Black Butte, and both the Black Butte, the saloon, the restaurant, and the upstairs apartments. That building is also in serious disrepair. We have been in that building, Justin and I, several times in the last few months, and we noticed that from one time to the last time, so I'm going to say roughly a month or so, that the building had gone downhill even further in just that small amount of time. The front of the building is like this, which means basically the perimeter foundation is sinking, and the side of the building is doing this. So the building is unreinforced concrete. If that building were in San Francisco or Oakland, there would be no discussion. It would be torn down. There would be no fixing it. It would just be torn down.
Microphone. John, talk. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry about that.
Here, we kind of already know.
So that's where we're at. These buildings are unsafe to occupy. They are unsanitary. Justin and I have both noticed that in the Black Butte itself, there is raw sewage running down the walls. I mean, where do you want me to start or stop, really? That's how bad these buildings are, in my opinion.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. In regards to the information we have, there's items on here that talks about repair and dates. Are you going to go those so the public knows what's in some of the details that are here in the memo that we have, required repairs to 219 Main Street, all those different ones?
Well,
because you named over two, it's like 8 or 9 here.
There's 13 or 14 or 15 different items here that a lot of the items are concerning building code violations and subsequent notification to the owner about the violations and possible how to repair these violations. There's been different structural engineers that have been at these buildings, and the first one that I met was on October 17th, and that structural engineer's brother, who is a general contractor, his brother told me that his brother, the engineer, was up on top of one of those buildings and was petrified because of the condition of the building. 2 weeks ago approximately, there was another structural engineer from Reading that was in those buildings, and again, he was astounded at the condition of them.
I have a question. Your first statement was that the previous people in your position didn't do anything or nothing was established, but I'm looking at these things that say need to be repaired, so I'm presuming when it says Class 1 by January 31st, 2020, they have that date to repair those 2 items there, and for Class 2 by February 28th, they have 4 items that they can do. Is that correct? Does that do anything, what we're talking about tonight? Because that's different than just saying general terms that, you know, they have this.
Well, yes, they had different classes of repair that could be done. Some of them were not life and safety issues. They were building code violations. Some of them are life and safety issues. So to answer your question, I mean, we could speak all night about these buildings.
I'm just saying that we should probably be, I see repair roof, that's health and safety for me. I see repair or replace electrical wiring and fixtures, that's a safety issue for you not to be in the building. So I'm wondering just how that works by the dates that on this memo has, by a certain date. Do we have that leeway, or is that not correct as a statement, or else I'm reading it wrong?
The owner has been notified, in my mind, with plenty of lead time to fix these. He wasn't notified that these had to be fixed and he had 3 days to fix them. He had literally months to fix these. Some of these fixes were accomplished. Some of them are cosmetic in nature. The broken sewage waste line was fixed. As of today, the parapets were dismantled. The roof, that type of roof on 219 is estimated with a 10-year lifespan. It is a foam spray-on roof with a white waterproof paint on top of it. What happens when that roof is compromised is that leakage can occur and you basically can't track it down because it travels. It can go, you might have an injury to the roof and yet it might be leaking inside the building 50 feet away. Very difficult to determine what's happened.
So there are other factors here. I'm just trying to understand from my perspective looking at, and for us, you have a list, there's a list here that's given to us, and it says there's a clause here. Some of the above work will require permits from the city and possibly the submission by you and the approval by the city of engineered drawings. So I'm just trying to understand the whole story so the public knows what's going on, what's not done, what has been 6, 7 months, or?
The only permits that were given on this, on 219, were a demolition permit. That's the only permit that has been applied for and received. There have been no construction permits applied for and obviously none received by the owner.
I have no more questions. I'm just trying to understand the information you gave us. It says permits or require repairs to the certain building. I don't know if that's done. If it's not done, I'm just trying to understand it. And if it's past that point, then great.
Can I interject to clarify possibly here? So this is the most recent set of things that need to be done, list that's been given. He's been given, the owner's been given notification on 2 prior occasions to meet the requirements. He was issued a citation, or 3 sets, or a set of 3 citations, excuse me, in May for not meeting the terms on that first time. He was issued a second set of citations in July for not meeting the terms. This is the 3rd time that he's been provided with information that he needs to make these repairs, and it hasn't been done.
Mayor, may I speak for 1 second?
Yes, please.
That helps.
I am just disgusted with this, but back in 2014, before the Bulls fire hit, 2014, we wrote an ordinance called the Vacant Property Ordinance. I refer to it as the Juarez ordinance myself. It was written specifically to address the catastrophe that we have now on our historic structures. We have had a business owner, a building owner, continually neglect the city of Weed, neglect the buildings, disrespect our community. I don't know how else to put it. So although we are talking about what's currently going on within the last year, because according to these documents, we've been at him at least adamantly since December of 18, he has still failed to respond. You can't contact him. It was impossible to serve him notices over and over again, and the city itself had to hire a code enforcement officer specifically for the gentleman in question or the company in question. That was just a point of clarification about how long we have been waiting, and now it's down to where hopefully we can save the buildings, and maybe we can't. So.
Isn't that sad?
Pretty sad, yeah.
Mayor,
and I spoke, and myself and Councilman Hall spoke to the Happy Company in question. Was it 2014? I think it was. It was before the fire. So.
On that note, I just, as far as the city working with the Happy Company, we've did everything we could, and we've taken a lot from the community regarding it, but I really have no problem saying that the city has made every effort to work with the Happy Company.
Mayor, we have more information to present before the council deliberates. If we can get back to the presentation.
Right, yes. Thank you.
Yes, John, just for clarification, could you look at the third page of the notice to repair and abate for 219 Main Street? There's a list of items there with two classifications.
Class 1 and Class 2, Bob?
Yeah, could you go through those and explain to the council the status of each of those items?
Sure. Class 1, by January 31st, 2020, repair parapets, including brickwork and mortar. The parapets are not able to be repaired. They have to be removed. And as of today, the parapets that were causing the issue are removed. That's where we're at there. Repair sewage waste line and properly connect to plumbing. That has been done. Class 2, repair structure. That has not been done in any way. The structure has severe issues ranging from ceilings that have fallen in, rot in walls. I mean, I have photos that I think many people would not believe that could happen in a small town. The roof is related to the structure. It's causing the issues because of leakage. Again, as I mentioned, that type of roof is only good for approximately 10 years. There's been no attempt to repair or replace electrical wiring or fixtures. In many cases, bare wires are visible. The repair of the front entry door was a piece of plywood placed over the plate glass window that was badly cracked.
Microphone, Bob.
Now, if I could direct your attention to Mr. Swanson's letter of Feb 4, where he goes through each of these items that are to be repaired. Could you comment on those, please?
On those items?
Yeah, comment on Mr. Swanson's
On his letter?
presentation there.
Some of those things were not said by me, is basically the best way for me to comment on that.
Okay.
Some of those repairs were made, some of them were not.
Can you comment on which ones were made, which ones were not?
As I recall, the I asked Mr. Juarez to not put any more plywood on any of the windows in downtown Weed, because actually we have enough plywood on windows in downtown Weed. He has a broken window on the Black Butte that I asked him to repair with glass like it should be, and he asked if he could have a little more time to do that, and I said yes. But I didn't want any more plywood on those windows. That's the one that sticks out in my mind right now, Bob. I would have to really... The plumbing has been fixed. That was actually relatively easy fixes, not really a big deal in terms of plumbing. The parapet was a life and safety issue. The plumbing in the Black Butte, as near as I can determine, is still not fixed. Justin and I were in there the other day, and you can smell raw sewage. As far as I'm concerned, it is not fixed in the Black Butte. I have never received any application to fix anything in any of these buildings other than the demo permit for the parapet. The sign at the Floresta building, I was contacted actually today by McHale Sign Company, and they would like to remove that sign on the 20th of February. But they will need an encroachment permit to do that.
This proceeding is primarily with regard to life and safety issues, health and safety issues. If you can tell the council which ones remain to be addressed, that would be helpful.
Well, what remains to be addressed are the balconies over both the Black Butte and the 219 Main Street. Both of those balconies are in serious disrepair. You can see that in the past, wood has actually fallen off those. Who knows when it happened, but there are pieces of wood, siding, trim, molding, whatever, that is no longer there. When you look at the underside of the balconies, you can see rotten wood, you can see sheared bolts, you can see rusted metal fittings. Why those balconies are still there, if we get one heavy snowstorm, they may not be there.
Which address is this one you're talking about?
That would be both of them, mainly 219, but 265 is also not much worse. 265, the Black Butte, we happened to be there today and noticed that the left front of the Black Butte, so in effect the northernmost corner of the Black Butte, is concrete that is capable of flaking off and landing on the sidewalk. The person that noticed this is a very experienced contractor, and his recommendation is that we block the sidewalk off from 219 all the way up to the north corner of the Black Butte, because it's another life and safety issue. If you look at the entire north wall of the Black Butte, you can see structural cracks that probably are not fixable.
Are these the photos you're referring to here?
Yes.
Do you have a set with you there?
I do not.
I'll give you mine. You can walk the council through these.
Okay. Thanks. This crack, excuse me, this crack here runs up the side of the building in that front corner. And what that is actually you've got the block wall, the north wall behind it, but you've got the west wall of the Black Butte, the front wall, which has at approximately about 1.5 inches concrete stucco type of finish on the front of it, which will flake off. I mean, it's not just if it'll flake off, it's just a matter of when is it going to flake off. And obviously, that's a really bad place for something to flake off. It's going to land on the sidewalk or somebody. This This picture here is what somebody was living in recently inside the Black Butte upstairs apartment.
Everybody see that?
No.
Yeah, can we pass those on up
Sure.
here? Thanks, Steve.
Sure.
Oh,
Those should be in your packets.
can we use,
Those should be in those packets.
No, you can do it.
we can put it under this.
Oh, Anna. This side.
We,
Now we're going.
We have the technology.
yeah, and the, and
I
the,
know.
and the technologist.
Yeah.
We should have had this ready.
Oh, that's why.
Oh, okay.
Oh, everyone's.
Well,
It's in the packet in the
Yeah,
email, I
in the-
think. Email, I'm looking, I don't see it in pictures.
oh, yeah.
The other way.
Other way. There we go. Okay.
And this is how we present it.
If you look at the yellow, you can see where the second arrow from the top,
Yeah.
that's an accident waiting to happen right there. Basically come all the way down to the top of the balcony, so all 4 arrows. What that is, that's a stucco type, like I said, 1.5 inches roughly of concrete, and that's an accident that will happen. Weather will get in there, it'll freeze, and it'll flake off, it'll land on the sidewalk.
Okay.
I mentioned that, somebody was living, this is in the Black Butte. Justin, you recall which apartment that is?
That's the former manager's apartment. A manager hasn't lived in that apartment for a couple of years, but that's apartment 8, I believe.
And somebody gets this as of a week or two ago?
That person was recently evicted through the court process.
Are there any humans or people living upstairs, or is it boarded up?
A few days ago, there was a caretaker in another apartment.
He was staying, per his words, staying on the property to try to keep anybody from reestablishing themselves in the building.
Only person?
Only person.
This photo is of, I hate to do this, but it's back to 219 Main Street. That would be the east wall of the upstairs apartment, and obviously you can see I mean, it's like where you and this photo is not very good, it's just too dark. This shows the underneath of the balcony on 219 Main Street. If you were to go down there, I could point it out much easier. Bolts that are holding the beams to each other. Bolts are sheared. Fittings are rusted. The wood beams themselves are incredibly rotten. Contractor saw this recently, and he said he would not let anybody get on it.
Thank you for the specifics, so we can see, and people can see there, so we have clarity on what's been done, what's to be done, and where's it at, and what previously happened 2 years ago. I've been here 7 years, and I've heard from my first meeting 7 years ago.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay. Microphone.
Thank you. And the rest of the packet, John, you have some, looks like emails. Can you explain what you have here?
I have
Is that?
excuse me, I have a packet of emails that, it's an email trail back at least 3 years that show that previous building inspectors had tried to contact Mr. Juarez to get progress done on these fixes. And basically what has happened is that excuses were made and nothing was accomplished. So, I mean, I printed out as many as I could find within reason. I mean, there's more to print out, but basically nothing has been accomplished. And these buildings are taking such a hit that now it's possible. I know Mr. Stewart was here and he is a renovation expert, but I don't know if these buildings are actually salvageable at this point.
When were these photographs taken? Did you take them?
Those photographs right there were taken, I believe, on Monday.
Oh, all 4 of them?
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah, they were just,
including the inside of the one?
oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, he is. All right, thank you, staff. Appreciate it. Mr. Presentation by property owner or representative. And you are?
Good evening, Mayor. I am Jeff Swanson.
Hi.
Hi. And council members, Mr. Pemberton. I don't think we've ever met, but I've certainly read enough from you. So I don't have an easy task here, I'll admit. I do want to go over a couple of things. First, one of the big problems that has been recently resolved is that all of the tenants have been evicted from these properties. There is nobody living there except for the caretaker person. I don't know how much experience you have as a landlord, or if you are landlords or landlord-tenant. You can't just show up and kick people out. You actually have to go through the judicial process to make that happen. Even squatters, and it can be very frustrating. I would venture to guess that the person that was living in the room for which you have a photograph was in fact a squatter and not a paying tenant, and it was still someone that had to be evicted to make that happen. So Mr. Juarez has made all of that happen. To say nothing's been done, that's been done. He's hired 2 engineers to come out and inspect the property. Kevin Butler was the most recent engineer. Mr. Pemberton reasonably would not issue a demo permit until he had a letter from Mr. Butler describing the circumstances, and he would not issue a permit to repair what's happened once the bricks were removed until the bricks were removed. I'm not complaining about that, but there is a process that you have to go through. Mr. Butler came out, he identified that the parapet could not be repaired. He wrote his letter, and I would think that you guys have a copy of Mr. Butler's report. I think it was in the stack of documents that your city attorney gave to me. And it's in there, and he describes the nature of the bricks and the parapet. And he says that it has to be removed, it can't be repaired. That removal has occurred. A repair prior to January 31st wasn't even possible because, as he said in his engineering report, it can't be repaired. It has been removed. As to the other Class 1 violation, the sewage waste line in connection to the plumbing, my understanding is that repair is actually done prior to Mr. Pemberton even being hired. If that's the information that I have. I don't know if that's correct. It's simply he's now reviewed the repair that was made, but it was done about 1.5 years ago. So with respect to the notice to repair and abate for 219 Main Street, I think that as to the Class 1 violations, they have been resolved. There is still some more work to do to now repair after the bricks were removed, but looking at the notice to abate, repair or abate, I think that that effort has been made. The Class 2 violations are not complete. Starting at the bottom, the entry door, there is glass that is purchased. There's clearly a misunderstanding. Mr. Juarez thought that he could put plywood over there because he thought that's safer, more secure. But he has tempered glass to replace those plywood doors. I even talked to him about just remove the doors and put, metal doors on there or something like that that's solid. But nonetheless, there is glass purchased. The doors will be repaired prior to February 28th. The same thing, just to jump around, the glass windows on the Black Butte. Tempered glass was repaired, and I went and looked at the 2 windows that are broken. Tempered glass has been ordered. It will be installed, and it will be installed prior to February 28th. That work will be done. So as to the notices of violation and the notice to repair and abate for 259 and 261, that work will be done. The other issues that I heard about Black Butte, I don't see them in the notice to repair and abate. And I'm not doubting at all that the place is in disrepair, that there is a lot of garbage in there, that you have a room that looks like the one that is depicted in the photo. I'm not doubting that there's a crack down the wall. I would point out, if you look at that picture that was 261, that wall's painted yellow, and that wall was painted yellow 5 years ago. And you're seeing a crack through the yellow, but if material had been flaking off, you would see exposed stucco or exposed bricks behind it. So yes, it's cracked. Whether or not it's structurally unsound, I'm no engineer. I don't know. Mr. Butler didn't look at that. I haven't seen an engineer's report that said that that's a problem, and it doesn't appear in the notice to repair and abate. I add it to the list of the stuff that has to be done. I get that. But tonight we're having a hearing about notices to repair and abate, and whether or not the city needs to go and hire Mr. Winston and go to court and take on these tasks themselves. And so what I'm saying is, Class 1 violations resolved on 2/19. The glass will be repaired before February 28th on all the doors and on the broken windows for Black Butte Saloon. I've seen the invoice. I know he's ordered the glass. Some of it is already here. He thought he could put plywood on there. He painted it black to try and make it look nice. Mr. Pemberton doesn't want plywood. You guys don't want plywood. Totally fine. There will be glass installed. The electric wiring and fixtures, an electrician is coming tomorrow. That's well ahead of February 28th. You know, he hired a lawyer. Has he ever shown up with a lawyer before? I mean, part of the...
I know, bless your heart. Okay, keep going.
Part of the issue, part of the issue is financing. I mean, there's no profit in sitting there and watching a building run down. I don't, why?
That's the question we've been asking for years.
And part of the issue is funding and availability of funds to make these repairs. Do you want to ask a question?
I do.
What
Did
is your
he not
question?
just purchase another building in town recently?
I don't know, and I don't know
Oh.
what the financing is on that, if that was debt financing. I do not know.
Okay, I just questioned.
Okay,
All
and a
right,
reasonable
keep going.
question.
We have a lot of reasonable questions since we got you here.
No, and that's okay, and I'll do my best to answer them, and if
Okay.
I can't, I will turn to my client, and hopefully he can help you out. The plumbing in Black Butte, again, if there's raw sewage in there, then that needs to be addressed. But what your notice to abate and repair says is fix the glass. I get that there are other problems, but with respect to the purpose of tonight's hearing, what I thought I was coming to talk about was what was in the notice, because that's what the public hearing was noticed for. And I'm not trying to dance around. These are all very real issues. But in terms of due process, and you've given him a million warnings, I get it. But in terms of the hearing that we're having, the process that we're following, the legal process that we're following, I think we're limited to the notice to repair and abate. And I think if you start wandering off of that, then that's going to be another argument that Mr. Winston and I will be having sometime down the road if the city makes a decision to just plow ahead with a lawsuit without following the procedures. And I'm not suggesting you guys are doing that, but clearly you're thinking about it, because I see what's on the last page of your agenda tonight. Closed session, City of Weed versus Happy Company. So I'm not threatening, I'm not blustering, you're not either, I get it.
Yep.
But for tonight, our hearing should be limited to the items that are in the notice to repair and abate. I think that's only fair. You guys are more than patient. I'm not saying.
Oh, we are
No,
way
I get
more
it,
than
and I'm
patient.
not saying. The city is ramrodding this guy, all of that kind of stuff. We heard about the balconies over 219 and over Black Butte. The balconies are new issues. I haven't gone through those emails, but I'll look through them and see if the balconies were identified. My understanding it was not until the engineer that we hired, Mr. Butler, came out and pointed out the problems with the balcony, that they became yet another issue on the city's radar screen. But I don't see them in the notice to repair and abate. And so the next step will be to have an engineer go out and actually look at them and say, yep, I can confirm. Because Butler's really clear. that he's not covering anything other than the parapet and the brickwork and the parapet. That's all. He limited his analysis to that. He said, I'm not the engineer of record. I'm none of that. All I'm telling you is this can't be repaired, remove it, and it's been removed. So as to the balcony structures, I think that it's important that we figure it out. And if it needs to be removed, then let's remove it. But let's go off of more than just looking up there. Let's have an engineer inspect it. That's one of the issues with a lot of these things. I mean, we need to have an engineer to review the roof. And as Mr. Pemberton, and I'm familiar with these foam buildings. I have clients that own them down in Reading. And you're right, you get a hole, the water goes in, it travels through the foam and comes out somewhere else. And who knows where it is. I know that that hole has been at least patched, so no more water is going in. You know, the picture that we saw from 219, the one with the exposed walls, that didn't just happen. Somebody actually went in and removed that. This is not the result of water draining in and then the wall just fell down. I believe somebody went in trying to identify where the leaks are.
I actually think that the wall fell in, but go ahead.
Okay, well, and maybe I wasn't there.
I know.
You know, so I don't know, but when I go in there and look and I see, it looks like stuff is pulled away and I don't see any debris down there, and I see where it's been cut in the ceiling where they're trying to find the leaks, it tells me somebody's working on it and it's not just falling down. But again,
You could go spend the night down there and
I have
check it
no
all out.
desire to spend the night down there.
I bet you don't.
I truly don't.
I don't either.
And I get that. And then that just leaves the structure, and the structure is this wall, and that's another issue where we need an engineer. I don't think there's any point in fixing the wall until you fix the roof, the ceiling, the hole up there, because if you don't have the roof issue figured out, you don't know how extensive the problems are. And maybe when you get the engineer that goes up there and they say, tear the whole thing down, then that's what happens. But with respect to the reason that we're here tonight, which is the notice to repair and abate, substantial progress has been made. Maybe not everything that you guys want to see.
Oh, that's right. Here's a good picture for you, too. We forgot that one.
Is it in the materials?
No.
Oh.
No, it's just one of our citizens. We get these great pictures from our citizens of what those buildings look like. We get comments, and I understand you're an attorney and it's your job, and I get that. My brother's an attorney, it's his job too. But when you have people will say to you, I just got a phone call last week that said, there's not a building here that I can even open up a business in. Or people will say, you guys should fix up your downtown, like we haven't noticed. It is so sad and so frustrating to have this going on, where, I've been on the council for 3 years, it's been going on for longer than me, that these buildings have just not even been occupied. I used to go into one of them and get my hair done, and one of the pieces from the ceiling fell out, and there were like 2x4s holding up the floor from the apartment above it.
While you were getting your hair done?
What the heck? Huh?
While you were getting your hair done?
No, fortunately, it was not the day I was there.
No, but that was the fix.
That was the fix, was, 4 2x4s stacked on to hold up this floor of the apartment above. It was just, it's absolutely craziness. But this is your job, and those were the only things that we have said, apparently. And so he started yesterday. Were you here yesterday?
I was not here yesterday.
Well, you should have.
That's when the bricks were removed
It all
yesterday.
started yesterday. It's been going on for 8 years, probably more like 15.
I
But
understand.
they started yesterday.
I understand all of that. I was one of the founding members of Viva Downtown Reading. I know all about downtown renovation. My family owns property in the downtown Reading area. I get it. I know.
You must not get it enough.
I understand. Well,
I was around back when we went to the downtown mall, when they tore out Main Street.
That was a mistake.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to add, one thing you said, Mr.
Yeah, it was. He died,
Swenson.
Yes.
Is that A term you said, and I think it is applied here, dodge and ducking or something you said like that as an attorney. I do think that's happening. And being here on the council for 7 years, I remember when I first came and I saw the condition of the buildings, and I know the things that we had to adopt an ordinance. And I was at a meeting that Mr. Warner spoke of. I was like, who is that? I was explaining that. So I do think that you're using what we define as far as in print, far as things that need to be taken care of. But my concern is that something happens that's not in print, that something falls and hurts somebody, who's going to be sued? And I think we will come for your client.
I think that if someone was hurt, they would sue my client and the city.
And we're trying.
You know, and I get that.
And we're
but
trying.
that's
We're
not legal
trying.
advice. You've got an attorney for that.
We're trying, just like downtown Reading, because I can remember the old downtown Reading in the 60s, and we're trying to fix things up, and I might as well turn around and beat my head on this wall, because that's all we can, that's as far as we're getting. And now, again, I respect you, you went to school and this is your job, but now he's hired an attorney to fight us.
I don't think I'm here to fight you. I actually, if you could hear, without waiving attorney-client communications, the things that I'm telling him to do based upon the things that I read.
Would you ask him to just sell it to somebody that actually wants to fix them?
You know, that's a business decision that I never advise clients on.
Yet it remains a liability for us if something happens.
Yeah.
My concern is that this list of items that hasn't been fixed has been told before, and just because we didn't get to it, we have some clauses now. We have January 31st, February 28th, which you pulled in when your statements are. So you went for that because of what we have done. And maybe documentation was all right there. My concern is still that, and I know people that were in those apartments, and they were just recently evicted. It wasn't a long time ago.
Evicted once a week.
And
I think we had a situation where somebody would get evicted and someone else would come in, and someone else would get evicted and someone else
Well,
would
when
get
you
in.
don't have a door on
And-
the front,
and-
it's easy to get in and out like that.
And if it's glass, they can kick it in, and they were coming up the back stairs, and their windows can be broken in. I mean, we have a great homeless problem down in Reading as well. I understand that as well. And people will come in, they will squat, they will take advantage of vacant buildings. I'm not even sure you can get insurance on a vacant building at this point. You know, it's issues that, you know, unfortunately our whole state is dealing with that kind of issue. But I just know that you can't evict on 15 days. You can't evict on 7. You know, I know he offered cash for keys. That's what I always tell my landlord clients. Pay the guy $1,000 and say, will you move by Friday? You know, that kind of thing. But if it doesn't work because people don't want to move because they know they can make it last 60 or 90 days.
We've done the same thing with him. There's people that asked him to just sell him the building. We're going to give him cash for keys, like you said, and he won't sell the buildings. And it's very sad.
I think we're getting a little far
I know.
afield from our
I know.
notice to repair and abate. But I appreciate your comments. I've never been in front of you guys before.
And look, we're pretty reasonable people.
I understand, and I appreciate the situation you're in.
Mr. Mayor?
I think we're stuck with why we're here.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to me, Mr. Swanson, it's obvious you're doing your job, and there's nothing personal here. You've heard our history, you know the history, you've seen the buildings. And here again, we're here and we didn't do the process properly, or you feel we didn't do the process properly. And we're not any closer to solving the issue. So what it looks like, what we're going to have to do is go back and do it by the book, and then we'll be back at the same place here again. If history has anything to do with it, we'll be back here doing the same thing again. It's a real shame we can't get on with this. But if it's the process, then we'll do the process.
And I appreciate that. And my hope, and Mr. Wares' hope, is that between now and that point in time, you'll see progress. And if you don't, then you guys know what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we're talking about.
I have a question for notice and abate. Do we if we uphold the notice and abate, does he have X amount of days to fulfill his abate?
You have a couple of options here. One is you could continue this hearing to the 12th of March, for example, and see if further progress has been made and make a decision at that time. You can decide that there's been a violation that has not been corrected, and you wish to proceed with the abatement action in the Superior Court. You could have further discussions on this or not. It's up to you.
I think And we can make that decision in closed session, correct?
You can talk about it with me in closed session, come back out and make the
And
decision.
report out whether we want to continue it?
Sure.
I don't want to continue.
Okay.
Mr. Juarez wanted to say a couple of things.
Oh, good.
It's never my intention for the things that you just said, and I can make comments on all of them. I don't mean to try to argue them. There's certainly two sides and two perspectives. And Ken, I'll start with you.
Here's our three.
Address the council, not me, please.
Ken, I attempted to talk to you. You wouldn't return my calls or emails, so it's an unfair statement. But there's...
Don't lie.
I can show you the emails. But I want to work together. I want to make this work. We've made tremendous progress in just the last few weeks. It was a difficult situation. We only got the last of the squatters out. You could attest to this, Mr. Bayberry, that the last squatters didn't leave until the January 31st. In fact, even after that, there was some challenges in getting them out. I appreciate your efforts from the police department, and we did everything we can. Every repair we made was destroyed by the squatters. We literally had situations where repair people would come, they'd work from 8 to 12, they'd go to lunch, they'd come back after lunch, and it was in worse shape than when they started. And so these are the challenges that we've come up against. The squatters are gone. We now have people that are interested. For 9 months, I worked with a prospective developer that wanted to purchase the buildings and for the value, to do something positive in Weed. And we went for that situation because we thought it would be the greatest use of this. Unfortunately, the deal didn't work out. But we have clear documentation that can show that. It started in early, I think it was March 11th is when we started to work with him. And we came to the determination at the very end of December that it wasn't going to work.
Was that the real estate sign that you had
in
the window?
The realtor was the one that introduced us to the gentleman.
Okay, that would be the real estate company that we called, and they didn't know anything about you or your buildings or...
I don't think that was a true statement, but...
Okay, go ahead.
But she put us in charge. She had introduced and worked with us through the whole process.
Oh, well, we didn't get a sheet.
You're referring to
We
Justin,
got a
I
sheet.
suppose.
Pardon?
Are you referring to Justin?
Justin White, yes.
Okay.
And I believe he said he met with many of the city council members. I think he said he met with you, Mr. Pemberton, but you don't say you recall that.
I never heard of that person.
I recall it.
Pardon?
I recall it.
I'm sorry?
I met with Justin.
So you did meet with Justin? Yes,
Yeah,
he
I don't know
quoted
anything, so it's okay.
many of the comments that you said. It wasn't very positive. But, yes.
Mr. Juarez, thank you for sharing what your thoughts are. I don't believe them, all of them, and I just tell you straightforward from a truth perspective. So I hopefully that you can do something quickly and not look at these dates here and do stuff by January 28th. Their safety and health is required for these buildings to be in check. We heard that they may not be. I've been here 7 years, and from day one, I've heard about conditions, and you gave your nice, pleasant statement about how you're addressing it, but it's not true, sir.
Well, Mr. Green, I think this is the first time I addressed on this issue here.
It's not. It's not. I was hired in 2014. It was a meeting that you came to and you spoke, and the same type of answer you're given. So I'm just going on what your behavior, what you've said, what has not been done, and just because
Mr.
some of
Green,
these...
I appreciate that.
You are correct.
What I'm asking now
I just want that
is-
on record.
Thank you. What I'm asking now is give me an opportunity to make it right. As it was alluded to earlier, these are old historical buildings. There are opportunities to benefit, the whole town can benefit from these buildings. And that's what we're attempting to do. Fighting, would you please let me speak?
Go right ahead.
Thank you.
What a joke.
If the buildings were destroyed, and they have been destroyed, I realize at this point, if they can be renovated and put back to use in a positive way, everybody in the city will benefit. If we're going to get into a large fight, I believe everybody loses.
I think the city has already lost. You have had long enough, you've owned the buildings for 20 years. I would like to see the string of emails that you say that you sent me. If you could print them out, I would be glad to see them.
I'll resend them to you.
Good. I would appreciate that.
And it wasn't a string, it was just a few emails, but I asked if I could please speak with you.
I know, I get it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'll leave your comment.
Mr. Hall.
Sorry.
Mr. Pemberton is mentioned, and you have mentioned, and Mr. Swanson, I don't know if you have, Mr. Swanson mentioned having somebody come in and assess the buildings, and they have came in and assessed them, and those, I think that's what we need more than anything. We need, are these buildings repairable? And if they are repairable, what are they going to cost? Are you ready to spend the money that it's going to cost? It seems to me that we need to have some type of, you know what we're working with here. Is because we're looking at pictures now, and it doesn't look good. I've been in the buildings, it doesn't look good, but if we can save them, we want to save those buildings, Mark.
Thank you,
we want those buildings safe. But if we're wasting our time here, we need to bite the bullet and get on with what we have to do with our downtown area.
Mr. Hall, thank you.
We need you. We need those buildings or those properties, and right now, and it's been that way for quite a while, it's an abscess.
I got it, Mr.
It's an abscess, and it's not fun living here with that abscess. It's dangerous.
Mr. Hall, thank you, but I would like the opportunity to try to make it right. If I don't, I'm willing to, I want to work with the city.
Well, my question, John, is what is going to satisfy us? What do we need as far as a engineering? What type of engineering would you want Mr. Juarez to come with to show you that we're going to be able to save them? Or
We would need a structural engineer.
push your button.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
We would need a structural engineer to do an on-site inspection. Provide plans because of that inspection, but the plans will also need to include not only the structural fixes, but also plumbing, electrical, mechanical, basically anything from the ground up, how to fix those buildings. Mr. Butler, who was here a couple of weeks ago, he is a reputable engineer. He told me that his plans alone for the structural part of the building of 219, this doesn't include the Black Butte, his plans alone, his fee would be between $30,000 to $50,000, and that's just his fee for the engineering plans. His estimate to fix the building would be in excess of $250,000 on top of that. So you're looking at in excess of $300,000 plus plumbing, electrical, and mechanical contracts.
For one building, for the smallest of all.
For the smallest of the buildings, correct.
That is the type of information that we need in print. The type of officials, the engineers, the dollar amount, we need that so we can go a step further.
And the information he provided me with, and I did hire his services.
Excuse me, I was talking with John. So the remedy is, it sounds like, are you willing to have Mr. Butler come in and do the engineering work for that building? $30,000 to $50,000 is what you said. Are you willing to do that?
So what we're doing is we're looking at a number of people. Mr. Butler was one that we have considered. As you can see, and as John has alluded to, he's a very reputable engineer, and we're only trying to work with reputable people. We're trying to find the best person that is most experienced.
You're going to find a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy?
Pardon?
Never mind.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Why don't
Okay. I mean, John, is that going to be?
Sorry, I can't.
Well, in a perfect world, you would get at least 2 bids on that. That's what you would do, at least.
Are you in the process of hiring an engineer to have the plans?
We've already contacted two. Mr. Pemberton alluded to two of them. We've also been in communication with two others.
So no plans have been drawn up yet?
But I'm not running
Pardon?
for office.
No plans have been drawn up yet.
Okay, we need some, I think what the council is asking, we need some plans. We need to know something is happening. John,
we're working,
speaking for you.
We have,
we're working with a group in order to try to renovate all these buildings. The insistence was that there would be at least 3 bids.
Mark, we've been working on this.
Mayor.
I understand.
I met you probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I had you up for dinner, matter of fact, and we started talking about what we're going to do here, and we haven't made any progress. All we're asking for, we have to have something decided tonight which way we're going to go.
And I'm asking you, please give us 3 months.
That's correct.
Give us 3 months.
The buildings have deteriorated a lot in the last several months, and we may have reached a point of no return, especially on the Black Butte itself. I do believe that the foundation on the Black Butte is compromised to the point of probably not fixable.
And we need the engineer to...
I get it, and I also am talking to other people who...
Mrs. Mayor?
I am speaking to
Hey,
other...
both of you, no.
I have a question, or I have a suggestion on how we could fix this.
Yes, Ms. Green.
Sell those buildings to somebody else and let us get
That was our
them
original
fixed.
intention. That's why we were in communication with
And
Justin
I
White.
seem to remember the last time you were here, the engineer or the manager or whatever the title you gave him was a entertainment festival coordinator.
Yeah.
What did he know about doing anything in a building?
I've been on this council for 3 years and a few months, and the first time I ever met you, you came to this meeting and you introduced us to a man who you said was an event coordinator. And I said, if he's not an engineer or a contractor, I don't understand why you've brought him to us. I can be an event coordinator. I've planned a party, and that was 3 years ago, and it's gotten worse. So for me to have to believe anything that you say, I don't know that I can do that. But you can go now and get your list going and start working on this, and we'll bring this back maybe next month or the month after, and we'll see how far you've gotten with it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And just to let you know,
That's got to come to a vote, doesn't it?
Right.
well, okay, that's just me saying, so I'm
Thank
only
you.
one of 5.
I understand.
But I don't believe a word you say. I'm sorry, Mr. Swanson, that I said that to him, but, yeah.
I would be to everyone's benefit if we can work this out.
I don't think,
And as far as you were saying as the event coordinator, it was not quite what he was. He was a little bit different title, but there was, the idea of it was to find viable uses for those buildings, and through those viable uses, the funding would come in order to make the necessary repairs.
I think your attorney wants you to stop talking. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have any more questions for me?
No.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Have a safe drive home. You came on a good day. It might snow this weekend. You might be able to get here. After the meeting, we are. The hearing is closed. So we are now going to move on to item 7, the regular agenda.
Do you need a motion to remove that?
On C?
Winston?
Yes, is that-
Do we need a motion to remove that from the consent agenda?
No, from the regular agenda.
Oh, it's on the regular. Okay.
Add a closed session for item 7C, the personnel
It's not.
hiring, the city manager.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess my question was wrong. Do we need to move it off of regular agenda and just say we'll come back after?
You're going to come back,
report out.
after the closed session, you'll come back and take action on 7C. So you're going to do 2 things. You're going to move it to the end of the agenda, and you're going to add a closed session based on the fact that the need to take action was not known to Sandy when she posted the agenda. We had to talk about the terms and conditions of employment. At that time, we didn't know we'd have to do that. That takes a 3/4 vote.
You have to turn your microphone back on.
I move to make item 7C at the last item on the agenda.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded to remove item C, put it down into closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we will start with A, administration. Council will consider second reading and adoption of ordinance number 458-2020 regarding the appeals process.
Since this is a second reading, we will not make a presentation to duplicate what was said last month. However, we are here and available to answer any questions should the council have any.
I'm still questioning why we have this on here, just so that we could make an appeal?
A second reading.
We had some ambiguity about how the appeal process works from the planning commission by the city council or by the city manager. This clarifies that.
Okay. I move, thank you. I move that the reading in full of the body of ordinance number 458-2020 be waived, said ordinance being read and adopted by title only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I was thinking I had to say something else.
After that little raucous, so maybe we just kind of...
I know.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart, for coming.
Thank you. I move the adoption of ordinance number 458-2020, an ordinance of the City of Weed, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Weed regarding appeals from the Planning Commission.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded for the appeals. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item B, administration. Council will consider an introduction and first reading of ordinance 459-2020. Sorry, Ron.
At the council's request, you asked staff to prepare an ordinance that would permit food trucks and other mobile vendors. The draft of 459 is presented for your consideration. It not only permits, but perhaps even encourages food trucks and food vendors in that in section 090, it allows the operation of those on a public street as long as they're not parked in one location for longer than 2 hours unless it's a special event such as where Main Street is closed. Also in section 100, if the food vendor uses a conveyance that is less than 3 feet wide and less than 6 feet in length, they may even use their city sidewalks for that purpose, as long as the use of the sidewalk does not interfere with pedestrian passage on the sidewalk, and as long as it does not block the entry into any structure or park. It goes on to not have much in the way of requirements. It allows the licensing of these vendors, but it does have in section 140 the opportunity for additional requirements to be adopted. Future regulations, should it be in our experience with these food trucks that it would warrant some additional rule to be imposed. With that, that completes my presentation.
I'd add to that, we added section 125 per the council's request. This says that if you're going to be in place for more than 5 days, you have to get a conditional use permit. I think that was a request of one member of the council, maybe Bob, I'm not sure.
125? Okay.
Yeah, 125.
Thanks, Bob.
Mrs. Mayor? I have a question, and I'm trying to look for it, and forgive me, I looked briefly. Wasn't there a discussion about, however we say it, hand washing and restroom availability? I don't see that in here, so am I not clear or not understanding what we talked about? Was that not an issue?
I think the council did, excuse me, Mayor, may I answer?
It was on 125.
It was on 125? I think we decided not to require bathrooms because it would hinder business. And normally they're temporary, they're there, they're gone. People also are there and then gone.
So there's no question about health with washing hands or however that is by a food vendor?
Well, the vendors have it on the
Vendors
truck.
are, yeah.
We're talking the public.
Okay, I'm just making sure from a health perspective that we've looked at all four signs of that.
Well, they have to have those on their trucks. Or they're not having it.
I know that we talked about it, so what we're saying is 520, 125 conditional use permit, that addresses those issues, right? Or questions?
That's good.
Because the last sentence says require the vendor make a restroom and other facilities available for the use of its customers during its operating hours.
May. They say they will. It says they may.
I mean, I would think that if somebody came to us and said they wanted to put in a mobile vendor food place, if they said they wanted to be there for 2 weeks, I mean, I make a requirement, I would think. But if they're going to be there for the day and then they leave and then they come back, I mean, the guy at the taco stand up at South Reed, he comes and goes.
And the people that use the bathroom of the grocery outlet. So
I don't think the people are there long enough to use the bathroom, and if they do, they have the bushes, but that's just...
No, the reality is that the people, it has been said that way, so. Not trying to be funny, just being real. I don't have any other questions on that, Mayor.
Go ahead.
First reading?
Let me do it. I move that the reading of the full of the body of ordinance number 459-2020 be waived, said ordinance being introduced for first reading by title only.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry.
I move the introduction of ordinance number 459-2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Weed regulating mobile food vendors.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. B is passed. Moving on to D. Human Resources Council will consider appointing interim city manager on a temporary basis.
The reason we put this on your agenda is, although the council may enter into an agreement later tonight to hire an individual to serve as the next city manager for the city of Weed, it appears that that individual might not be available as of February 29th. And you may want to have someone have the designation of interim city manager for the purpose of helping you put together the agenda and the agenda packet for the March meeting of the council. This gives you the opportunity to name someone for that. If you name a current department head for that purpose, under the new rules of PEPRA, which were adopted, that actually has to occur at a regular meeting, and it has to occur as an action item, and it cannot be on the consent agenda. There are no other limitations by state law We do have a policy, however, that if an individual is taking a position temporarily that's above their pay grade, that if they serve in that capacity for two weeks or longer, then they're entitled to a 5% raise from their current salary.
Forever? Or just
No,
for that week?
just for the time period in which they're serving in that interim capacity. In other words, if you named a department head, even if that 5% would be less than the starting salary on the grid, for city managers, you don't have to pay.
City manager grid.
No, you only have to pay the 5% above current salary.
Of what that person's getting
Yes,
for that time?
yes.
Okay.
Does that complete your report, Mr. Stock? Does that complete your report?
Yeah, that completes my presentation. I wasn't wanting to be presumptuous to recommend any particular individual to you.
As mayor, I would like to ask if Craig would take that on. I'm not hearing, and I'd love to.
Yes, I could do that
Appreciate it,
for a short period of time.
Yes.
Do we need to make a
More than
motion
2
for this?
Yes.
Yes, by motion.
I so move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded
beat you.
to appoint Craig Sharp as our interim city manager on a temporary basis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The effective date?
March 1st, is that, or?
March
There's
2nd.
29 days, right? So
March,
1st?
no, we have to do February 29th, right? 'Cause
February
we need them on
29th.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we add that to the motion? The effective date of it, that's all?
Yeah.
So it's on
Do we
record?
need to add that to the motion?
Yeah.
The effective date?
Yeah.
I need it for payroll.
You need it for payroll.
Okay, we will add that February 29th date to the motion.
I'll
Are we
second-
still all
I'll
in favor?
second that.
Are we still all in favor?
Yeah, we're all in
Yes.
favor, I
Okay.
think.
And no opposed. Okay. Moving on to E, Human Resources. Council will consider review of the 2019-2020 current salary schedule for potential modifications, make recommendations to staff.
Each year, we bring this back to you. We started doing so about 3 years ago when the state adopted a rule in the retirement plan, CalPERS. CalPERS was having difficulty with chief executive officers and department heads getting significant pay raises in their last year of employment and modifying their retirement benefits as a result. And so CalPERS adopted a rule that said that they do not have to consider the salary that's paid to officers unless that, or any employee of the city, unless the salary fits within the salary schedule that's adopted by the council and posted on the city's website. So from that point forward, we've been putting together annually the salary schedule, bringing it before the council, having you adopt it, and then posting it on our webpage. What you see in this particular one that's presented to you is what you have approved in the past. In other words, we have a 3-year MOU for all 3 of the union groups that we negotiate with. Those provisions in that 3-year set the salary all the way through to June 30th, 2021. So the numbers that you see here are consistent with the MOUs that you previously adopted. There are a handful of positions that are not covered by an MOU. department head, city manager, a few positions in the city clerk's office and in the finance department office. Our policy has been that if we gave a 1% or 2% cost of living in the MOUs to the union employees, we have generally given at least that. Sometimes we've given more, but at least that. So the dollar amount that you see for those non-union positions is only the percentage that was in the MOU. All three of the MOUs had the same cost of living increase in the third year of the contract. So we didn't pick and choose, it's the same number that was in all three of those contracts. So I hope that with that explanation, you would be willing to adopt the salary schedule as presented and allow us to post it on the website. That will protect our employees' retirement plans.
I do have a question, Mr. Mayor. You just mentioned that the city manager and department heads aren't included in a certain aspect of the salary schedule?
Yeah, you notice in the line items that the difference between 2019 and 2020 and 2020, 2021 is slightly higher for department heads and for city manager. It's the same percentage that was in the MOUs.
Okay. I want to make sure that's clear because it was said that they're not included in the process, but they're on the sheet here.
They're not included in the negotiation process because they haven't identified a union, but we, in an effort to try not to have 5 unions, we tend to treat the non-represented employees as favorably as we do the represented employees. That way we didn't have an ASME group for office staff, and we didn't have an ASME group for department heads, which would require us to negotiate 5 MOUs instead of 3.
My question was only just to explain the difference in what was said and what's on the sheet so we know what we're looking at. That's all it was.
Okay.
If that's it, then I think we're okay. As long as all of us understand that.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, I do have
a question.
one question. We have 5 to 7 salary schedules. Refresh my memory on how you get from A to B to C to D to E.
Generally, we can employ at higher than step A.
Okay.
Once we employ at a step, the employee can get the next step higher annually, provided that there is a meets expectation evaluation prepared by their supervisor and put in their personnel file.
Okay.
But the last step can't be reached until you have had 5 positive evaluations between the second to last step and the last one. So
you can't get from D to E without 5 years in between.
Yeah, you can go from A to B in 1 year, B to C in the second year, C to D in the third year, but to go to the E column on those that only have 5, to go to an E column, it takes 5 years to go from D to E.
Okay.
With the ones that have 7 years, 7 steps, it's 5 from each of the last 2, if that makes sense. In other words, you can go A to B, B to C, C to D in 1 year increments, and you can keep that up for the 5. But the 6th step takes 5 years, and the 7th step takes another 5 years.
And the condition to move from A to B is based upon your supervisor's annual review on performance or?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You're not guaranteed that. You only get that if you...
If all goes well.
Yeah, you meet or exceed expectations.
In heaven here that we live in.
We have had people that have not moved on a step.
Okay.
Because the evaluation said that they needed to make improvements.
And we're doing evaluations, I know, in Public Works and PD, right? Okay.
Yes, basically every department is doing evaluations. The only person who has fallen down on evaluations is that I was supposed to do Steve's in January and didn't do it.
Well, you're
So you can slap my hands.
Thanks, thank you.
But it can still be done before February 29th, right?
I will get it done, yes. He will meet or exceed expectations, it's just I got to get the paperwork done.
Thank you for completing that.
Ms. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Ron, can you explain, and I don't know if even this is the time, but one number that is glaring here to me is the city clerk. She's not here tonight, so I think it's a perfect time to me, the city clerk is the skeleton of this whole process. And she, or that position, is less than the other head. Why is the reason for that? Is there a responsibility for that position, or am I out of line here talking about this? I'd like to know.
We have to talk about it in public, so probably not.
Okay.
When we created our salary ranges, we wanted internal equity and external equity. Internal equity meant that we wanted two positions that had about the same responsibilities, regardless of which department they might be in. But if they are basically doing the same job, they should get the same salary. External equity is we go out to other governments and we look at what they're paying in an effort to be competitive. And when we did that salary survey, we found that the city clerk's position historically is paid less than other department heads in the governments that we surveyed. And so it ended up being less. Now, it's perfectly justifiable to go back to check again. And one of your tasks in the next year or two for your new city manager might be that you want them to conduct the salary survey before you get to the before you get to the June 2021 to see whether that remains the case or whether that has changed over time. But that is the only reason why it's slightly less. It's a reflection of what we saw in the market as to what similar positions were being paid in other governments.
Thanks.
Any more questions?
Yeah, in a couple places I know of, a city clerk is paid in the neighborhood of $11,000 or $12,000 because all they do is city clerk stuff and not city executive secretary type of, we have kind of a dual fold position here.
For example, we could not use Mount Shasta in our salary survey because the city clerk there is
elected, I think.
Is elected, and they have another position that basically provides the day-to-day city clerk operations as an assistant. When we went out to do salary survey, we were picking only those cities, well, we picked Mount Shasta for police purposes, but we didn't use them for city clerk purpose.
Okay, that answers my question. I'm good for adopting the schedule.
Was that your motion?
Was that your motion?
Do we have to make a motion for this? I don't think so, do we?
Yes.
I move to approve the salary schedule for 2019, 2020, and 2020 and 2021.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the salary schedule. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to F.
I have to take a little time on this F, and I apologize for that. I know you've got a long meeting. I'll try to be as brief as I can be.
Not anywhere near.
We as a community have always sought community development block grants for infrastructure improvements. Infrastructure improvements would be water, sewer, and roads. And yes, we do apply for grants from the Water Board for some of those same purposes, but we have been very successful in getting infrastructure grants from CDBG. An example of which is we drilled a well in South Weed. Another example of which is we put a new water tank on Bel Air. So we have on an annual basis, when they send out a notice of funding availability, we've submitted on every year a grant application. We haven't always been successful, but we've always tried. Previously, those grants were issued on a competitive basis, where people asked for more money than there was there, and some people got money and some did not, based on a grading program that CDBG used. Starting today, they've modified their application process, and they now tell us that it's first come, first serve. Primarily the reason for that change is because they were getting into trouble with the federal government that the money wasn't getting out fast enough and wasn't actually being put to work. To apply for money this year, you have to have a shovel-ready project. That means you have to have construction plans completed, ready to go out to bid, and you have to have completed the environmental. Our number one project, the one we've submitted for 2 years and have not gotten funded, was a drainage and flood control project, which you probably recognize by the title we gave it, a bioswale. I cannot submit that because it would cost $250,000 to do the design, to have the environmental completed and be ready to be shovel ready. We don't have the $250,000. So Paul Reuter and I and Craig and Rod Mears got together and we looked at what projects could we submit. We had a $5 million grant for sewer replacement, and when the bids came in so high that we had to cut work out of the plan. We also had a problem with Caltrans in that when we put a sewer line on 97, even though Caltrans really needs to come in and repave all of 97, they are requiring us to pave the center lane at a cost of, well, you have the Yeah, you have it in here as a change order. That required us to take more items out. We have those because we actually went out to bid. We have those plans done and we've completed the environmental. We have also some water projects where the water board has given us planning money and we've gone out, we've done the plans, and we've completed the environmental. Those things amount to $2.5 million. The sewer replacement things that didn't get done were White Avenue, which is from the elementary school down to North Davis, which would help the elementary school, which has some problems because of our line. We also had to take out improvements on Oregon Street, so that would be included. And the water items are in the Bel Air area, replacing the water lines in Bel Air. For lack of my giving you a more detailed explanation, to get us to the point that we can submit a grant application, 3 things need to happen. First is we have to have an administrative hearing, and I've scheduled an administrative hearing before me on February 19th. Second, we need to have an administrative hearing before the City Council. And we're currently anticipating that's going to be done on your March 12th council meeting. And Rod Mears will be here to handle that. The third thing is we have to prepare the grant application and submit it. We have always used Great Northern. But Great Northern doesn't have a contract with us for doing this work. We have the ability to pay for them to do this work from our CDBG funds that are in hand. But I talked to Emily and she said rather than just hire him to do it, I'd like to have a contract. I'd like to know what we're paying for. I'd like to know how much we're paying. I'd like him to have a legal responsibility to provide the document. I would like to have the council approve that contract before he's entitled to be paid. It's the way we probably should have handled this forever, and I appreciate her desire to move it forward. That's why you're seeing this. It's a contract not to exceed $6,000
A year.
for the whole project, submitting the one grant application. I'm actually going to get Rod to do 2 grant applications
On the same $6,000?
for the same $6,000. And let me tell you the second one. When they announced that they were going to do this back in January, they set up meetings so that we could come and we could hear how the new project was going to go. They had a meeting in Chico. We went to that meeting and we talked to them. When they originally announced this, they said that small cities, which had difficulty coming up with the money to do the planning in advance and get the plans prepared and the environmental completed, would be able to apply for planning grants. We got to Chico and they had no planning grants. And we said, hold it, you promised you were going to have planning grants. Now, I will tell you that we were the only people in Chico that were complaining about it. So maybe that's not a problem for a lot of people, but it's a problem for us. Because like I said, to get that bioswale shovel ready, it's going to cost $250,000. We don't have that kind of money. Well, they went back to Sacramento with our complaint, and they found $500,000, and they're going to offer 2 planning grants in the entire state of California, each one for $250,000. And I told Rod I wanted him to apply for that. Our likelihood of being able to get it when there's only 2 in all of California, probably not real good. So I told him, you got to figure out how to squeeze that into that $6,000. And he promised that he would. So we're here asking you to approve the contract for grant writing services to Great Northern. One key element of this, Rod has been working on this since December. Rod was part of our group that went to Chico and has been getting the information, that sort of thing. We think it's reasonable to pay him for his services with this. So the contract doesn't read that he gets up to $6,000 from today's date, but actually he will be able to bill us for some of his work that he's done up till now. We think that's fair, and so the contract was written that way.
That's my question, Ms. Mayor.
The contract has been reviewed by Emily, approved by her as to form. I believe it was reviewed by the city attorney and approved as to form, and so the staff is recommending your adoption.
My question is, it says effective the 15th day of January, so that would include being okay for whatever his services are.
Yes.
And that was my question, because it's going back. This is not the 15th of January, it's forward, so we're just backdating that for that reason.
Yeah, we purposely went back in time because we thought it was fair to pay him for what he's done up to now.
Thank you for that explanation, so we know it's on record.
Okay. Any more questions? Mr. Hall? No?
No.
Kim? Okay. We need a motion?
I move to approve the grant writing services for Great Northern.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the grant writing services with Great Northern. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to...
One final thing.
Yes.
I probably should have mentioned it. When you see the project that we're proposing next month, the council meeting, you'll see that we're proposing $3.5 million. $3 million is for the construction, but $500,000 of it would be funding housing rehabilitation loans within the community. We tried for that last year and did not get it, but we're going to try again. By the way, the housing element is still competitive, and the deadline date for submitting for the housing is April 14th. So that's the reason for our schedule of having you look at it in March and authorize that it be submitted. It'll be finalized and submitted end of March, 1st of April.
I have added to that, just a question. Charles Anderson, our rep from the League of Cities, didn't he mention at the League of Cities some component that has a housing element that we can apply for?
Is
that part of that? Okay.
Yeah, we did that. That's the SB2 grant.
Yeah, the planning.
Our neighboring cities have been told that they have gotten the SB2 grant. We have not received an official letter, but in talking to the state, they only had 2 questions in regard to our application, and they told us that they were going to recommend its approval. But I haven't yet seen documentation from the state saying that they've approved it. I fully expect you're going to have that before April.
That's a housing element to it, right?
Yeah, and that was the one Rico was working on, if you remember. They've assured Rico it's going to be approved. We expect to get a letter saying so and then followed up with a contract, and that contract has to be approved by the council. So you'll probably see that in either your March or your April agenda, accepting that grant money for the housing and the planning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Is everybody good with what's on there?
I want to pull item C.
Oh, okay. Do we have to have a motion for that, or no?
No.
Okay. Other than that,
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda minus item C.
I'll second it.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I was late, sorry.
That's okay, thank you. Okay, item C from the consent agenda. Is that,
Right. It says, my only question, it says, whereas the city has received additional, an additional, never mind. I'm trying to scan this, right? I didn't have it on my computer, so I apologize.
is that the COPS funding budget?
Yeah.
Well, now that you pulled it, go ahead, Justin.
Well, I saw what it was for, so I'm okay.
We anticipated 100,000, it came in at
But this is good
155.
Okay.
So all we're asking for is we need an amendment though, because we slated approximately 93,000. We didn't account for 7,000 in our tally. So we've asked that 7,000 be added in to the 421 section. It should have that in there under the COPS funding. It was not. That was zero. So that needs to say 7 to account for the approximately $7,000. It's not accounted for out of the original 100,000. Everything else is expenditures associated with that excess above $100,000.
My only question would be, does that affect us in a finance budget way, any type of way, positive or negative?
I couldn't speak to that. I'd have to.
Positive, they're getting more funding.
I was going to say, we get more money.
Yeah, so it's good.
So I apologize for pulling that. I move that the reading in full of the body of resolution number 06-2020 be waived, said resolution being introduced and adopted by title only.
I'll second it.
See what you did?
You
did it.
I did it to myself. I moved the adoption of resolution number 06-2020, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Weed recognizing unanticipated income and amending the fiscal year 1920 budget to authorize its expenditure.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Staff reports. Justin,
Yes.
you have money.
Is this your first report?
Staff report. Yeah,
No,
still
it's not my
staff
first report. There's several things, I know it's been a long meeting, but several things I want to cover. I did attend the Office of Education meeting last week. It involved probably 95% of the schools and almost every law enforcement agency in the county. It was regarding interactions with children, and what the district attorney's office was also there. We spoke to what changes have come about, both for policies for schools as far as discipline and for law enforcement as far as juvenile law. I did want to say that Kermit Walters did speak highly from praises he's received to himself about our SRO program, and they are actually looking at trying to implement some sort of floating SRO program amongst the schools. They don't know how yet how they're going to do that, but they did speak highly of our SRO program. I did want to address some of the parking that's been brought up. So in an effort to not penalize people, but also to not selectively enforce parking throughout the city, we've had issues on main thoroughfares with vehicles that are parking in violation of the vehicle code against the flow of traffic, driver's side wheels against the curb. That creates safety issues, especially on a highly traveled roadway. In citing some of those individuals, they have pointed out that in the less traveled neighborhoods, people do it all the time. Well, and again, to not be selective, we have chosen the spirit of the law and we put warnings on people's windows. Well, I wasn't aware that it had become such a problem in the neighborhoods, and we started getting complaints, and then I went out to look. One block alone, there's 6 houses on one side of the street, there were 6 cars parked the wrong way into oncoming traffic. So it's become a problem throughout the entire city. So rather than give people citations where they have to pay fines, we've just given warnings. Everything that's been placed on the windows are warnings. They're not citations. So I just want to address that. We're not trying to enforce something. We're trying to correct.
I'm one of those violators, although I have a driveway now, so I don't.
It's become such a problem in the neighborhoods. Entire streets are parking the wrong way now.
And it's because they have potholes?
No, that's one of the reasons. It sounded like the flow of traffic was choosing to go that way because of the potholes. But it wasn't just that street. It's.
My son does it. Give my son a warning for parking in front of his mother's driveway.
I'm guilty.
And I think that's what he's saying. They're being selective on busy.
Yeah, we don't want to appear that we're being selective of who we enforce and who we don't. We need to be fair across the board, and that's first and foremost. And then lastly, I just wanted to, Bob's point in time count that he brought up, or Councilmember Hall's, I just wanted to point out that it's not going to get any better. Recent statistics that I've received from 2009 to 2017 in San Francisco alone, homeless went up by 7,200%. They went from 586 known homeless to 42,000 just in San Francisco. So
From what number to 42,000?
From less than 600 to 42, the number that was provided was 42,000. And 22,000 intravenous drug users in 2017. That came from the city's Department of Health. So,
With that note, I would like to actually thank Bob for doing the point-in-time. Ray Strack, again, helped with the point-in-time. Sarah Montgomery, I think she left with her little one, helped in the point-in-time. Richard Rivera helped.
Leanne.
Leanne Colbert, her at the Resource Center, Leanna Culberson from Six Stones. Did I miss anybody?
I think that covers it.
Covers it. And they did a bang-up job. Although our numbers were up, I think we were up a little. We just had good help to get them counted this year. We did a pretty good job, and thanks to you two and the police department.
we are seeing an increase every year in the number of fluid people passing through the area. It has steadily increased every single year for the past 10 years.
They're suggesting that they do a summer count, just to kind of get a feeling for the flow of people that come and go. And what's important about the numbers is that if we can demonstrate the numbers, we get funding for those numbers so that we can address the problem. So that's good. So I thank everybody.
I'd like to add something real quick to that. It's the funding is the major part of it, but what we're finding when we talk about having something during the summer, right now what's happening is we're doing the point-in-time count throughout the state, and obviously the people that we have here during the summer are moving to another place, moving to Reading or the larger communities, and they're the ones getting the funding. We're not getting the funding because, we're trying to, we want to do another count so we can maybe bring some light to that fact that just doing the point in time in the winter for us is quite a disadvantage when it comes to funding.
It's a national, because I know that Medford was doing theirs at the same time.
The
I think it's a national
one.
day, a week.
And they're also constructing a homeless facility in Wairika right now, I believe. It's not quite done, but I'm not sure how many people will get in there, but it'll be at least addressing some of it.
If you went back and counted again in the summer, would you know if they were the same people that you counted in the winter?
Not, well, I
You
didn't
don't
go out
take
and
names,
count.
right?
All I did was organize a meeting, and Bob and those guys ran with it.
We would know, but we don't, there's
no
it's
names.
anonymous, no names, so we
Yeah,
really
okay.
couldn't prove.
The only way you would know is recognizing people.
Right.
Okay.
So,
The only reason they'll talk to us is because it's anonymity.
Right.
so I have a question about how the count goes, because I was told this week that a person who actually lives in their own home but has no running water is considered homeless.
Yes,
So it's not just,
actually, no utilities. Okay.
yeah, it's not just the people who are living in camps. It's people who actually have a dwelling and are living in it, but they have no running water, probably no electricity. I know school-wise, if you're a student, if you're couch surfing, you're considered homeless.
But they have their own count. You guys didn't count. That's Colette Bradley that does that.
What's that?
Did you count the juvenile?
You don't count
or did they-
children.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Oh, you did? If they were with their families?
Right.
Yeah, because the school does have their own
I
count.
think Weed ended up at the count 57, you said, 58? Yeah.
Is that it,
And we
Justin?
also had eight sheltered, that the county was sheltering that were coming from the Black Butte area. Most of them were Black Butte.
I have a question for the chief. Your first statement talked about some training that was for youth. Was that something you mentioned?
No, what it was training for law enforcement to know what schools are able to do disciplinary-wise, restorative-wise, and training and counter-training on the opposite end for the schools to realize, because the schools are frustrated because they're having major incidents. One in a school in the North County, a faculty member was assaulted, and it's been 6 months, nothing in their eyes has been done. There's also some court process there that's slowing things down, staffing problems. So it was training for both sides to understand the school, through legislation, is unable to discipline kids when I was a child or when you were a child. And law enforcement is also, we're unable, many people for crimes that they used to see somebody in the back of a patrol car going away at least. That's not happening anymore. People are not being penalized in the same way. It's a different type of criminal justice system now.
And my question was, because of that, and I'm cautious to say this because the person asked me not to, but in our preschool areas or schools, there's some situations that are happening that's violence, and it's looking like nothing's being done, and I didn't know what our police force has to address that or attach that. There's some behavior things there that are violent that are not being taken care of, and I'm scared for it because of my sister's work in sexual violence. When I hear those type of things, it raises hairs on the back of my neck. And so I don't know, do we have any responsibility to do that?
For preschool, all I could offer is that they could call us and an officer could come and talk to the juvenile. But in the eyes of the court, especially for somebody under 15, they're not, their ability to recognize that they're even committing a crime even that definition has changed. The state there's currently possible legislation coming that's going to deem everybody under 21 a minor in the eyes of the court. That's potential. So again, there's what people remember and what is occurring now are two different things. We need to educate people on what can and can't be done.
And that was a discussion, so I'll probably talk to you offline to see if that's something that we need to look at, because I'm scared about it already.
Sure.
Is that it for Justin?
Thanks, nice job.
Craig?
I thought you passed over us.
No, I'm waiting for you to say thank you for appointing you interim city manager. Is that what you wanted to say?
That was what I was going to say.
I thought so.
Just working on grants, this EDA stuff, trying to get Vista Drive finished.
Is that going to happen this summer?
We're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
It's turning out to be a wreck, but I think it's something that we got back on track today.
Today?
Today.
I have a question on that. I'm just thinking too much now. Your grant writing, we have a new service now with Great Northern. Are you going to work with them, or is that necessary, or are you completing what you're doing? So we have a grant writing service now.
This Vista Drive one was a combination of the EDC that was here today. They helped write the Vista Drive grant for EDA, so We use different people for different grants, yes. And Pace Engineering is the ones that's helping with all the water and sewer grants.
Just want to know if we accept as a city, that grant writing additive, if that's working for anything else. So that's all I wanted to know.
No, we've used them before. So that's all I got.
John, you're not.
John, do you have anything you want to tell us? You don't ever get this
I
opportunity.
never get this opportunity, no. We're actually pretty busy in the building department. We have the Love's Truck Stop coming in. We've got a McDonald's remodel. We have new antennas on the Verizon Tower on top of the hill, south of town. Things like that. There seems to be enough activity that it certainly isn't boring. Yeah. So.
I have a question for you, because I'm constantly, like almost on a daily basis, getting asked, where are we with Love's? And the last update I was told was the trees were supposed to be cut down by the 1st of February, and they're not.
That's a great question, because the architect who's located in Oklahoma City thought the trees were cut down also. But they're not. Craig might have an update on that.
I don't have anything on the trees, but the plans are currently under review. John's got them out to his plan checker, and the city engineer is looking at the on-site plans. So the plans are here, and we're doing review for them.
So what was the by February 1st deadline?
Had something to do with the bird nesting and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
I think, and Craig could probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I think bird nesting can be alleviated if they do a survey, is that correct?
Yeah.
okay.
I just have people with shotguns all around so the birds don't land.
That'll work.
John, not to beat a dead horse, we had the discussion with Mr. Juarez, who's still here, and what I was trying to get to the point that we need engineers to tell us where we're going. We haven't reached that yet. Am I off base when I am asking? That, to me, seems to be the most important.
That would be a great first step. We just have to determine who's going to pay for that.
Okay.
But yeah, if we could have an engineer site survey and get a response from an engineer saying this is what needs to be done, this is an estimate of what it will cost, if we could have that from 2 different engineers, that would be a great first step.
Yes, it would. Okay.
That should be provided by the building owner, am I wrong?
In my mind, it should be, yes.
In my
I don't
mind,
think
it is.
we could spend for private.
No. Chief?
Don't have it anyway.
Hello. I submitted an annual report into your packet. That goes to CAL FIRE every year. First year I put it into your packet. Just goes over our calls and what we've done.
It's in our boxes.
Yeah, it's in your box.
Okay, thank you.
So it's on CAL FIRE's website after March. So also March 10th, I invited Sue and Chief Carter. Myself will be going to the supervisors meeting to discuss the removal of the exclusive rights for Mount Section Ambulance to be removed from their contract. March 10th at the supervisors meeting. That's the first step. And then they give direction to SSV, Sacramento, to put it back on their agenda. So I'll have to go to that meeting. I don't know when that is yet, but that's the first step. So. They're turning. Yep, the wheels are turning.
Anything happening on March 7th?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Oh.
March 7th, a house was deeded over to us by Roseburg Mill. I'll get to the other one too. By the mill for training and burning purposes. It's the old painter's house. Painter's house. So go through the gate here at the end of the street, and you go out in the field. There's a barn, and out there, there's a house out there that the painter used to live in there. It's in disrepair, so they gave it to us, they deeded it over to us, they removed all the asbestos and lead and, you know, all that stuff. And on the 7th, at 8 o'clock in the morning, we'll be doing fire ground training in there, and then the final step about 12, 1 o'clock, we'll burn it down. And then also on the 7th is the Firefighter of the Year dinner, which I have nominated Chris Brown, one of our sleepers. And the reason I nominated him is because he's been at the fire station for 2 years. He went through academy. He received his EMT. He became a driver for us to drive the trucks. He got his endorsement, and he's now a hazmat tech, an official hazmat tech. So he's done a lot. And the Citizen of the Year this year, we have nominated Mr. Sharp and his wife for being Santa every year for the last 15 years. So they will be joining us for dinner that night to be recognized. So we appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, do you have to go in uniform?
Well, yeah, trying to get a picture, but I need a picture first.
Oh, I have some
Yeah, I have some too.
with my cute grandkids in them.
So interestingly, I got all kinds of calls, what day was it, Tuesday, Wednesday? It was on Facebook, dog fight at the community center.
Right.
And of course, everybody heard it on their scanners.
Sure.
And they're all calling, I'm like, there is nobody here, there's nobody even parked at the park.
No, we were across the street. It was across the street.
So it wasn't at the community center,
No.
okay. I missed it.
But speaking of the community center, I just spoke with Miss Green today. My wife is actually volunteering, and of course the fire department will help her, but we're going to start a blood pressure clinic twice a month at the community center. So anybody can come and get their blood pressure taken.
And your guys are gonna start,
Yeah,
they're gonna start working out in the pool. They're gonna
not for
start
your price.
training in the pool.
We got to renegotiate that price.
$5 a person.
You know our budget. You know our budget. Yeah.
Your guys all have $5.
And then, well, one other thing. My wife, my sister-in-law, and my daughter, and myself, we submitted a video to HDTV for the hometown takeover.
Oh, awesome, yes.
And it has over 1,400 views already online. It's on our Facebook account.
Is that the Extreme Makeover Town?
Yeah, they take over the whole town and come and make it over. There was only 3,000 submissions across the United States.
Really?
That's all.
And the reason is because their website was broken the day of the submissions. But I found a way to submit it because I emailed them. And I said, hey, your website's broken. And they said, yeah, you got to do it through Dropbox. Well, there was a ton of people on there going, your website's broke, it's down. And they couldn't submit their videos, so we are submitted. Don't know if we'll get it, but, because they're only picking one town, but.
Can I ask, can you maybe get an update with the fire academy and new people that are assigned on? Have you done that already?
Say again?
Fire academy people that have passed it and that are now employees of the fire department or have gone? Not what you frowned for.
No, we don't have any, we only have 2 employees, me and Brian, and then a seasonal person.
I know someone just came in the store, they just recently graduated, and they say they're going to be a part of the Wheat Fire Department. I just don't know.
They're volunteers.
Oh, volunteers,
Right,
yeah.
that's a part of the department.
Yeah.
Still volunteers.
Currently, we have 7 sleepers, which is, that's all we want. We have space for 8 people, but the 8th bed is for the person that's our temporary person, in case they, sometimes they spend the night to go to school the next day instead of driving back. You know, like one guy works for us, he's from Dunsmuir. So he doesn't want to drive back home, he just wants to go to school the next day, so he sleeps there. Or sometimes the captains come in and volunteer, and then they sleep in that bed as well.
I think it's good for us to have the information. Thank you for that.
Almost all of the people that graduated the academy, almost every single one of them, if they graduated in the right time of the year, get picked up with CAL FIRE for the seasonal position. And then they come back to us for volunteer work, unless they move.
Thank you for that.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Sandy, Emily, Sandy?
We have nothing to report.
Both of you have nothing?
What a smug look for that.
She's like, I'm getting out of here.
Ron?
Tonight is the last city council meeting that I'll be attending, and so I wanted to express my thank you for your giving me the honor and the privilege to serve as the city manager for the city of Weed. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Mr. Winston? Bob Senior?
I would like to also say that
Just the other way around.
I think we need to acknowledge the fact that although Ron he's not a perfect individual certainly, but he has moved the city forward in a lot of aspects, from doing our audits through the Bowles fire, changing ordinances to help people rebuild their homes. The list can go on and on. We have new water tanks, we have new infrastructure going, we have new businesses in town, albeit not exactly in where we would just love to see them, but we do have new businesses that make a big difference for our coffers. So from me, I do really appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you.
I think you speak for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
From all of us.
Okay.
We're going to have to invite you back and give you a plaque, you know that, right? And a dinner or something of that nature. Or
We always have
We
food.
take,
Emily, how much we got for another dinner? Okay.
I make a motion we adjourn to closed session.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn to closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,